Good day and welcome to Predators Proclivity, where we look at data from the season for the NHL Nashville Predators and make comments on it. It's pretty much all we do is sit here behind a mic and talk and, figure out what it is that might be interesting about how the Preds are playing and try to make it relevant. Understand some of the numbers parts might be really good bedtime material. Put you right to sleep. But hey, I've got some new data. Well, not new data, but new ways of looking at data today. Something I mentioned the other day. And I'll get to it at the end. So you'll have to stay awake to get to that piece. It's very exciting. I actually did see a couple of really interesting data points. Hopefully, not only can I make it relevant to you, hopefully I can explain it so that I'm not confused and neither are you. And I guess we'll see how it turns out. A little bit of cliffhanger there, huh? Yeah. All right. But that is why we're here, to talk about data and the Nashville Predators. So the Predators play tonight at home against the St. Louis Blues. The Blues are 40-31-4, 17-18-2 away, so about 500 on the road. The Blues are fifth in the Central Division with 84 points. They are just behind the Preds, who are in fourth place in the division. They are 6 points behind Nashville, and they are 3 ahead of Minnesota. Minnesota has a game in hand. They are the first team out of the playoffs, trailing LA by 5. LA won last night against the Kraken. LA needed the win. It's great. I hate to see the Kraken lose, but more on the Kraken later. Ooh, boy. Just all over the place with this foreshadowing. They are even with LA on games left. So they're trailing LA by 5, even with games left. 7 games, I think, is what's left. So in the last 10 games, St. Louis are 7-3. They have been alternating wins and losses over their last 5. Most recently, beating Edmonton at home 3-2 in overtime. So let's hope that alternating win-losses continues for the St. Louis since they won in their last game. Tonight's game starts a 3-game road trip for the Blues. They go to San Jose and Anaheim next. A little bit of a road trip. They play 3 at home and end the season at Dallas. The Blues made one trade at the trading deadline. They made a trade with Columbus, which didn't really have any effect on either team for the season. They traded goalie Malcolm Subban, PK Subban's brother, for future consideration. And I had to look into what that meant. I thought it would be a little more obvious, but I guess it's a gentleman's agreement. Can we still say that? I'm not sure there's another term, a more PC term. I don't care. But there you go. I've been doing another podcast about home renovation, and I have to remember to use the word main suite instead of master or primary and we haven't quite figured out what to do about his and her closets. I'm not sure what the PC term is for that, but I don't really care what the PC term is. But it is interesting to know. Anyway, the gentleman's agreement, a handshake deal, they'll figure it out later. They'll figure it out later what St. Louis is going to get for having given Columbus Malcolm Subban. Interesting when I was also looking this up, apparently, and I have forgotten his name. I guess the most famous of these is, they say that, I don't know how it's considered, but I guess Detroit got Chris, what was his name? Sorry, bad story now. They got the player for $1, a minor league player for $1, and the guy played in the NHL until he was in his late 40s. A really good player for Detroit. Don't like Detroit. Don't like the colors. But don't like Detroit either anyway. So I'm ambiguous on the city. On the team, I don't like them, of course. Why would I like them? Because they play against my team, right? So there was that one trade. Neither team made themselves better for the playoffs. It looks like St. Louis is going to wind up outside. So was that a good move? Maybe they should have done something. Maybe they didn't have too many options. I don't know. But here they are. Okay. And the Preds are 43-28-4, 21-16-1 at home. So not bad. The Preds are, in their last 10 games, 6-3-1. 6-3-1. They have lost their last 3. Arizona and Colorado on the road, and Boston at home on Tuesday, 2 days ago. They are 16-3-2 since February 16th. St. Louis is the last game in this 2-game homestand. Next up is a 2-game road trip. They will be playing the Islanders and the Devils on Saturday and Sunday this weekend. So they'll have a road trip, 2 games back-to-back on Saturday and Sunday. After that, they alternate home and away games for the last 4 games of the season, playing Winnipeg, Chicago, Columbus, and Pittsburgh. Winnipeg is the only team left on their schedule that is currently in a playoff position. So a lot of people would say, hey, the Preds have an easy road, but we've seen that's not the case. So you can't take any of these teams lightly. You've got to play. Especially where the Preds are, they need to get up every game and do their best. So the Preds, the Preds are 4th in the Central Division with 90 points. They are 6 points behind Winnipeg. Both teams have 7 games left. So, the Winnipeg went on a 6-game losing streak, which was really good. For the opportunity for the Preds to try to make it up and get to the 3rd division spot, but they have their 3-game losing streak. And so it's no longer looking very promising. It's not ruled out yet. The way I like to look at things is if you have less games left than you are points behind, then kind of rule you out. Yeah, the less the less number of points, the less number of games, it gets a little sketchy. If you got 1 game left and you're 1 point back, or 2 points back, that can be easily remedied, especially if you are playing the other team. So Dallas. So that's the Preds, 6 points behind Winnipeg in 4th. Dallas leads the division with 105 points. They won last night. They are followed by Colorado at 100 points, 4 points ahead of Winnipeg. Dallas has played 1 more game than the rest of these teams. The Preds are still in the number 1 wild card spot. 1 point ahead of LA, even on games remaining. Vegas is 3 points ahead of the Preds with the same number of games remaining. The Preds are 6 points ahead of the Blues, both with 7 games left. If the playoffs started today, the Preds would be matched up with Vancouver. The Canucks are 3 points behind. I don't think that's right. I think it's 5. The Canucks are 3 points behind Dallas and even on number of games left. No, that's right. Excuse me, I'm just sitting here talking to myself. I don't have a broadcast engineer to blame this on. Or maybe I make up a persona. Anyway, the Canucks are 3 points behind Dallas and even on the number of games left. Dallas, Colorado, and Vancouver have secured a playoff spot. That hasn't changed in a number of days. However, Seattle now joins Arizona, Anaheim, Chicago, and San Jose in being eliminated from playoff consideration. So that was the big Kraken news. Their loss to LA last night put them into the bin of no chance. The no chance bin. Speaking of the no chance bin, Calgary is 16 points out with 8 games left. They have about the same situation as Seattle, but they played one less game, so they're still clinging to their dying embers of hope that they could make the playoffs. Probably not, actually. And Minnesota is 8 points out with 8 games left. So their hopes of climbing over St. Louis and then figuring out whether they're going to get ahead of LA, Vegas, or the Preds is looking less and less likely. Currently, if the Preds were in a tie with either LA or Vegas, Nashville holds the edge with a higher regulation win total. RW, if you're looking in the standings. The Preds have 35 regulation wins to LA's 33 and Vegas's 32. So yes, LA would have the edge on Vegas as well. And the next category, if there's a tie, is the regulation and overtime wins, ROW. The Preds have 41. The Kings have 37, and Vegas has 38. So were Vegas and LA tied on regulation wins, Vegas holds the edge on the Kings on the second tie-breaking category or determinant. Winnipeg has the regulation wins and regulation overtime wins advantage on the Preds, 40-35, and regulation wins. And regulation and overtime wins 45-41. 7 games left. That's probably not going to change, but it also doesn't look like that's going to matter. So they hold the advantage with the teams that they might be in a fight for the first wild card spot. I don't know that I would rather play Dallas or Vancouver. I hate Vancouver. I don't mind Dallas. Having lived in the Seattle area and been a Kings fan, I have no reason to like Vancouver. The Sedin twins, the Canadian diving team, as we used to call them. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, Dallas, I don't really mind. Brett Hull, great player, played there for the longest time. The announcers, I don't think the Kings announcers are as good and I can never remember his last name when I'm sitting here in front of the mic, but Bob Miller, after Bob Miller retired and left Jim Fox by himself, I think the Kings... there was no way it was going to be better. It might have been at least as good, but I don't think it's quite as good over time. Their announcing is getting better. It has to get better. But when they first brought the guy in, he's obviously a Rangers fan, and he didn't even know the Kings players when he was doing the announcing. So it's kind of embarrassing or annoying being a Kings fan that your announcers don't even know who the players are. But Bob and Jim were a fabulous announcing pair, and the guys in Dallas, haven't heard them in a while, but used to really appreciate how objective and explanatory they were. Really, really good, a good announcing crew. Plus, Dallas wears green. I love green. So, there's a lot of things to like about Dallas. I still want to beat them. But whether we play Vancouver or Dallas, I guess if I was going to be at the game, I'd rather see them. Well, they might have to play both, but I love seeing Vancouver lose. But anyway, tonight the matchup. Tonight's game is the third and final game with St. Louis this year. Since they're not going to make the playoffs, that's got to be as accurate as it is, and It will be the only home game against St. Louis for the Preds. Seems weird. I think I might have missed something, but it wasn't on my spreadsheet. I checked. The Preds won both games in St. Louis, in November winning 8-3 and in February 5-2. In November, 8-3, the win for the Preds was the fourth of a 6-game winning streak. St. Louis had kind of a sketchy start. They were 10-8, but they did have a 2-game winning streak when they came into the game, so both teams were winning. So 8-3, pretty good win for the Preds. The scoring, the Preds got the first 3 goals of the game in the first period to St. Louis's 1. Nashville then got 3 more in the second before the Blues got another goal. The second period scoring was completed by a 4th Nashville goal for that period. Both teams got 1 goal in the third. First the Blues, then the Preds. So in this case, they got the first goal of the game, they won 2 periods, and they tied 1. Pretty much on home or away, if you win 2 periods, you win the game. Or if the Preds do, you win the game. The opponents have won 2 periods and lost the game, but in that case, the Preds won 2 periods as well because it went to overtime. So the Preds won the third period and overtime, and the opponents won the first and second. But if the Preds win 2 periods, they are undefeated this season. In February, the 5-2 win. For the Preds, this was the first game after that fateful U2 concert decision. So it was the first of an 8-game winning streak. But they had lost 2 coming into the game. That game against Dallas, that 9-2 thrumping by Dallas. That caused the U2 decision, which then reverted the fortunes for the Nashville Predators. Coming into the game, St. Louis was 8-2 in the 10 games leading up to the game and had just beaten Edmonton 6-3 at home. They are in this game, the scoring, the teams each got a goal in the first, with Nashville getting the first goal of the game. The Preds scored the only goal in the second, and the Preds added 2 more in the third before the Blues scored again. And the Preds got an empty netter to complete the scoring with about 1:32 left in the game. They got the first goal of the game, won 2 periods, and tied 1. Same scenario as in November. Hey, I like that. Both games against St. Louis, they got the first goal of the game. They win 2 periods. They win the game. I like it. That would be a great scenario for tonight. Can we just dial that one up? All righty. St. Louis enters tonight's game 4-2 over the last 6 games. And just like the last game in St. Louis, their previous game was a win at home against Edmonton. So, symmetry. The last time they played, St. Louis had just beaten Edmonton. Their last game, they just beat Edmonton. The Preds won the game. Tonight, let's have the Preds win the game. The Preds are gonna close out tonight. Their 3-game losing streak ends, and they're going to start a winning streak. But yes, they have, coming into the game, they are on a 3-game losing streak after a 6-game winning streak. It was a lot more fun looking at the numbers when they were winning. I didn't even mind them losing 1. And they lost 2. Now they've lost 3. All right, guys, you can't keep this up. Unfortunately, you can keep it up, but let's try not to. I'm sure they are. Yeah, it's not like they're sitting back there in the locker room going, yeah, it doesn't really matter if we lose tonight. I'm okay with that. How about you? Let's order some pizza. No, that is not what is going on, I'm sure. I'm not affiliated with the Preds. I'm not in the locker room. I have seen the locker room. It's a little small. I got to take a tour of the Mariners locker room. Ooh, boy, now that is nice. Man, that is really nice. And the part, they probably have a locker room I didn't get to see. They had the tours at Bridgestone, and you got to see where they sit around, put on their equipment. I'm sure they've got, I hope they've got a little nicer area. Apparently, when I took the tour, we got to see the Mariners locker room. Apparently, we weren't supposed to be able to go in there. Nobody knew. We didn't do it intentionally. We got taken there by the chef of the Mariners. So, what do you know? Okay, so what can we expect from the Preds at home? This is not the Seattle Mariners show. And I won't be doing a podcast on that. If I did, I'd have to have constant oboe music because no matter whether they're winning or losing, they are going to lose and not make the playoffs. 16 years in Seattle, they made it really hard to be a Mariners fan. And so I am not. But we're not, again, this is not the Seattle Mariners podcast. This is the Predators Proclivity podcast, and the Preds play tonight at home. So what can we expect from them at home? Okay, well, they are 21-16-1 at home, which is, good. Their last home game was Tuesday, a 3-0 loss to Boston. Very tough game. Till the third period, and then the dam broke. Okay, anyway. So, yeah, all the scoring was in the third. So they tied the first and second periods and lost the third. Since they didn't score, they also did not get the first goal of the game. So they lost one and tied two. So at home, if they tie the first period, they are 9-5-0. 9-5-0 if they tie the first period. In the first period, overall, they are 11-3-1 as far as just winning the period, right? So winning the period, they're 11-3-1. If they lose the period, they're 1-8-0. They, the other night against Vegas, they actually lost the first period and wound up winning. But if they tie the first period, they are 9-5-0. So it's not bad. It's a winning record. It's good. Okay, that's what they did against Boston. If they tie the second period, they're 11-3-0. I should have that if they tie the first two periods. I don't have that with me. I know I was looking at that at one time. I didn't write that down. If they tie the second period, they're 11-3-0. Again, another winning record. Winning, they're 8-2-0. Losing, they're 2-11-1. So their record when they lose these periods is not good at all. If they lose the third, again, that's what they did the other night with Boston, they are 3-8. 3-8-0. If they win the third period, they're 15-1. And if they tie it, they're 3-7-1. If they do not get the first goal, they are now 6-11. When they lose one period, they're 4-6, and when they tie two periods, they're 3-3. So 4-6 when they lose one period, that's probably the worst stat there. Losing the third period, that's a singularity. Getting that a little bit more, but. At home, their record by period is pretty good in the first, 15-9-14. The second period, they're 10-14-14. So, like I've said, one of the reasons why I started doing this podcast was because I felt like at home they did not play very well in the second period. That has improved of late, but currently they still have a losing record. So at home, they've only won the second period 10 times. They've lost at 14 and tied at 14. So you can say, okay, well, 24 times they either won or tied it, and that's good. But The third period, they're 16, 11, and 11. So just as likely to tie as lose, but a winning record still. So that's good. They're 5-1 in overtime. So that's that. Getting the first goal is a 3-1 advantage for the Preds, roughly 2-1 for the opposing team. For the Preds, they're 15-5-1. 15-5-1 when they get the first goal. The other stat that caused me to look at doing or look at doing the data, then I wanted to do something with the data, so I have this podcast. But so basically 3-1. That's pretty good. 15-5-1. Lose 6-11. The Preds did not get the first goal against Boston. Their record by period, when they don't get the first goal, when they do not get the first goal, the period record, this is just the period, how that goes in the period. The first period, it's 1-9-7. So they have only won the first period once when they didn't get the first goal of the game. The second period is then 2-10-5, 6-3-8 for the third, so that's at least a winning record. But their record in the periods, if they don't get the first goal, is not very good. When they do get it, completely different, 14-0-7 in the first. So really, really makes a difference in the first. Not every first goal is scored in the first period. Against Boston, it was in the third period, which has never been the case away. The first goal has never been scored this season for the Preds in the third period on the road, but it has happened a few times at home. One of those little things that I just find curious. 8-4-9 in the second, 10-3, 10-8-3, 3-1. So, if they do not get it, they're 2-0 in the shootout. So, or 2-0 in overtime. So it makes the first goal makes a big difference in the end on how they play. I don't know, but again, it's stark what the records when they don't get the first goal. At home, winning goal by period in percentages. So the Preds, when they win, 38% of the time, it's the second period. They get the winning goal in the second period. And when they lose, the opponents get their winning goal 47% of the time in the third period. And that's when Boston got the winning goal the other night. So that ticked up a little bit. So 47% of the time, almost half the time, when the opponents win, they get the winning goal in the third period. But for the highest percentage for the Preds is the second, 14 in the first, 24 in the third, and overtime. So significantly different. Overall, the Preds are right there with the overall because 36% of the time the winning goal is scored in the second period. So 36% overall, Preds 38%. That's pretty close. And 35% for the third period, but the opponents get it 47% of the time. So that's significantly different. And that's all at home. So I guess that's good. If they're going to lose, at least it's going to be close into the third. I guess that's what that means. Scoring by period, the Preds have been outscored by their opponents in the first and second periods by 6 and 2, but they have a 9-goal advantage in the third. And since February 16th, they have a 1-goal advantage in the first, 4 in the second, and 13 in the third. It was 16, but of course Boston scored 3 the other night. So big scoring advantage for the Preds in the third period. In the first period, the Preds are roughly as likely to outscore their opponents by 1 as they are to tie them in the period, 32% to 37. pretty good. I guess all these, the higher percentages you expect to be at a tie or one because most games, I guess, it's the outscoring part, right? So this isn't soccer. We're not 1-0 games, but then scoring comes at a premium too. Scoring has gone up over the last few years, part of it being reducing the size of the goalie pads and other changes that they made in order to try to increase the amount of scoring, make the game a little more exciting. But still, more scoring by both teams. So having a differential of 0 or 1, you would expect to be very high in all periods. And in the first, for the Preds, it's 32 to be ahead by 1. And 37% to be a tie. Outscoring by 2 by either team is the same at 8%. So actually the opponents outscore the Preds by 2 or 3 more or 4 more than they do by 1. The percentages are 3, 8, 8, and 5. So yeah. But 24% of the time, the opponents will or have outscored the Preds by 1, 2, 3, or 4. And 32%, the Preds will outscore them by 1. So those numbers look good. In the second period, a third of the time, they tie, 37% again. And about a quarter, 26%, the Preds outscore the opponents by either 1 or 2, 13% each. And that's 20 compared to 29% of the time the opponents outscore the Preds by 1. So 29% opponents outscore by 1, 26% for the Preds, they outscore by 1 or 2. 37% still tied. Third period, again, still close to a third for a tie, 29%. And another third, they outscore the opponents by either 1 or 2, 16% each. And the opponents outscore the Preds by 1, 2, or 3 goals about a third of the time, 11, 8, and 11. I think it was 11, 8, and 8, and then Boston outscored the Preds by 3 the other night, and so that hopped up to 11%. Okay, so some of the new data here. I looked at what do the Preds typically look at when they come in and they have a third period loss. Okay, so, post-game analysis, when they lose the third period, the Preds are 6, 2, and 3 coming into that period. And so that means, 11 times they've lost the third period these are all home statistics. So at home, 11 times, 6 times they were winning. 2 they were losing, and 3 they were tied. So given that they were winning 6 times, losing 2, and tied 3, the resulting record is 3 and 8. So when they are leading and they get a third period loss, they're 3 and 3. So they're about as likely to lose as not. All ties and losses became losses. So makes sense. You lose the period, your tie's not going to go any better. Neither are your losses. But the wins, so 6 times they're winning and they lose the third period and they, enough that they lose the game half the time. This did not happen on Tuesday, but but interesting if they tie the third period, okay? So overall, when they tie the third period, coming into the period, they are 8, 7, and 7. Fairly even. 8 times they're winning, 7 times they are losing, and 7 times they're tied. But the home and road statistics are significantly different. At home, when they tie the third period, they're 1, 7, and 3. 1, 7, and 3 at home, and 7, 0, and 4 on the road. So tying the third period, they've never been losing on the road when they tie the third period. And 4 times they were tied, and 7 times they were winning. And at home, completely different. tying the third period, they're usually losing. They're only winning once. Of course, if you tie the third period, the situation doesn't change, right? So if they're tied at the end of the third period, then it goes to overtime. If you're winning and you come to the third period and you tie the third period, you win. So that was interesting to see that was significantly different between home and on the road. At home, if they're winning, they win. If they're losing, they lose. Being tied, they're 2-1. So 3 times they were tied. They tied the third period. So go to overtime. They're 2-1, overtime shootouts. On the road, winning wins. They weren't losing, and so they had no losses. And the ties, the 4 ties, were 2 wins and 2 overtime losses. Pretty split there. The other notable situation is when they lose the second period. At home, 1-11-2. When they lose the second period at home, they were 1-11-2. So when they lose the second period, they've usually lost the first at home. So once they lost the second period when they had won the first, 11 times they had lost the first period, and they go on to lose the second. Twice they were tied, and they lose the second period. Away, similar, 2 wins, 9 losses, 4 ties. The end result, of course, when they lose the second period, the Preds are 2-12, and on home, and 5-3, 2-12 and 5-3. That doesn't seem right, but away the wins split. So away they had 2 twice. They lost the second period when they had won the first. One was a win, one was a loss. And the ties, though, are 3-0-1. So if they were tied the first period on the road, lose the second, then 3 out of 4 times they won the game, and one was an overtime loss. So that's interesting. It's a small data set. That's the problem with an 82 game season. Doing some of the analysis during the season, and the fact that some scenarios don't happen as much, the unpredictability of the game. Which I guess is why you watch. If you knew what was going to happen, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting. So anyway, I saw those numbers the other night. I know it can be a little hard to parse, but I think that there's just some interesting, the tying the third period and how different they are at home and away. That's really, really interesting. So that's what those numbers are. Okay, so tonight's matchup is the St. Louis Blues. The Preds really need to get off, what did I say, off the schneid? And I'm not sure. I'm from the South. I don't think I say that. I think that's a Northern expression. Get them damn Yankees out of here. Either way, the Preds need to stop the current trend and get on a new streak. Let's go into Bridgestone Arena tonight. Hopefully get the first goal, win the first period, and let's take care of business and get the win tonight. Go Preds. Thanks for listening. I'm Preston Proctor, and you've been listening to Predators Proclivity.